Really, we think that there's a way to stay ahead of almost all disease and pathology, and to an extent aging, slowing aging down as well, by really addressing metabolic dysfunction and a number of the things that we can actually measure in the body for that. So there's great biomarkers for this. And we're also just living in a really exciting time. Like what's come out from a sensor standpoint and from a laser standpoint, from a kind of component level over the past 5 to 10 years is unprecedented.
Welcome to Personalized by Vitamin Lab, the show where we dive deep into the world of personalization in healthcare. I'm your host, Dr. David Dizer. Please remember that the following discussion is for educational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease. Speak with your healthcare practitioner first before integrating anything that you learned today. Join us as we explore the remarkable stories, breakthroughs, and possibilities that come with the pursuit of personalized healthcare. Welcome back to Personalized by Vitamin Lab. I'm your host, Dr. David Dizer, and today on the show, we're talking innovation at the intersection of movement and recovery with Forrest Smith, founder and CEO of Kineon. After suffering from chronic knee pain himself, Forrest set out to engineer a smarter solution. And that solution became the Move Plus, a powerful, wearable cold laser therapy device that's transforming how people treat pain at home. Backed by clinical research and driven by a mission to help people take ownership of their health, Forrest has helped deliver over 50,000 devices worldwide. His vision, a future where technology, science, and community come together to keep you moving, pain-free, and thriving. Please enjoy our episode with Forrest Smith. Welcome back to Personalized by Vitamin Lab. I'm here with Kineon co-founder Forrest Smith. Nice to meet you, sir.
Likewise. Thank you for having me today. I'm very excited about the conversation.
I really appreciate you coming on the show. I've been a huge fan of low-level light therapy, cold laser therapy for over a decade, using it in my own practice, promoting people getting their own devices, promoting frequent use of these type of tools for physical medicine. I would love to hear some of your backstory a little bit, how you got into this kind of technology, like what drove you to be so passionate about this technology?
We actually started the company, my partner and I, as a mission-driven company. So we've both built companies to exit before, and we want to do something a little bit different and really kind of focus on impact more this time. But as with any organization, you have to have kind of a North Star, and you have to be measurable. And so what that came out at in the end was our mission is to increase the quality of life for the largest number of people we can in the most substantial and measurable way we can. And before we even started looking at technology, that was kind of the discussion we had. The reason we chose low-level laser therapy or low-level light therapy or photobiomodulation, depending on what you like from a kind of research term, is because there was the largest gap or arbitrage between what existed and what could exist from a technology and outcome standpoint. And so to put a little meat on that bone, there were essentially the well-dosed and properly designed machines when we started designing our devices were kind of desktop, plug-in-the-wall laser devices.
That's what I have.
And they're awesome. And they're great. The only problem is that it's hard, they're $30,000 to $50,000, and they're hard for people to afford to be able to use at home. And you'd really, from a patient standpoint, like to see people using these as effectively and consistently as possible. And so our goal was to be able to kind of democratize this from a technology standpoint. And we got very lucky with some of the technology that's been developed over the last 10 years. So vertical cavity surface emission lasers really shrank the footprint and the cost profile for lasers and allowed us to start building those into something that's really modular, wearable, easy to use, and easy to build habits around is the key for this. And so that's where we really focused is how do we reduce the friction for people to start using clinical level devices at home? And the main friction point is price, and we've addressed that by getting it from $30,000 down to under $500. But the other friction points are things like wearability. We've gone through additional clearances with the FCC so that they don't have to give out the rubber gloves if you want to take it on an airplane with you.
Nice.
And a number of different things like this that have really been our focus from a design standpoint, just to make it easier for people to use and build habits around.
So smart. And you were able to get it funded through Indiegogo?
Initially, yes, that was our first product was funded through Indiegogo. We've actually done a second. We hit it off very well with the Indiegogo team. They were
Wow.
very supportive, and yeah, it's kind of grown quite a lot from there. We've got over 50,000 devices out there around the world, changing people's lives on a day-to-day basis and helping them have an alternative to kind of harmful pharmaceutical solutions.
Big time, big time. Well, I'm really excited to see it on the market. Like, I've spent years like saying all the studies are 20 to 30 treatments every day. Let's try 4 to 10 and see if your severity reduces. But you're probably going to need a few more. And it's unfortunate that you can't take my device home. And now the potential is there. So I've always been looking for an 808. As an 808, we use it for pain management, and it's hard to get because they traditionally have been so incredibly expensive. But you've been able to do this and package it so that people can have more frequent treatments. Can you talk about like the benefit of using it every day? Like how powerful is this thing?
So I actually my laziness knows no bounds, and I if I'm using it on a daily basis, then it's going to be easy for people to use on a daily basis. I think so. I can kind of talk you through some of the things that I use it for, and that we see really kind of powerful outcomes for. The first one is we were working with a lab in Japan on doing some testing, and one of the testing protocols was essentially an abscopal or remote photobiomodulation application where you treat one part of the body and then you see impacts in another. And so kind of what that's mediated by is things like hemoglobin and S-nitrous ethyl that can be essentially nitric oxide is parsed from these hemoglobin in your blood. So treating the neck where you had these two huge blood vessels gives you a really nice access into your body for being able to treat for improving cardiovascular outcomes, dumping more nitric oxide and S-nitrous ethyl into and enos into your blood, and really seeing some powerful impacts on the cardiovascular system. What this Japanese lab did is they paired this with lower gut treatments that have been really synergistic with this. And so the synergies are around a number of different things like neurotransmitters. A lot of your neurotransmitters in your body are generated in your gut. And so you see really after about a 10-day to 2-week period of treatments like this, of real uplift in your energy levels, your mood, lower levels of brain fog, and higher levels of cognitive ability. That's one of the ones that I do on a daily basis, and I can kind of give you guys a quick look at what that looks like, because it's relatively easy with these devices. But you just pull it around your neck and then apply it over the larger blood vessels in your neck, and then to put it on your gut, you take it and tighten down the straps in between these different modules that have the lasers in them, and then you put it over your lower gut. So 15 minutes neck, 15 minutes lower gut. And we've seen both in the medical literature and just our user base and myself personally from an anecdotal standpoint, really powerful outcomes from immune health, gut reduction of inflammation, and again, those powerful kind of neurological impacts from a cognitive standpoint as well.
Wow, incredible, incredible. Yeah, I love that. It resonates with me because I've had great success with cold laser therapy for post-concussion syndrome. Like just flat out good results. People are pleased. Sleep, stress reduction, brain fog reduction, good results. So using it for optimization, I know has been done tons with, so for example, like walls of LED lights or walls of laser therapy. But typically I think the wavelength has been wrong because it's so superficial. It's like pretty good for the skin, right? Yes. But yours has this ability to penetrate deeper than most. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes, that's exactly correct. And we also spend, really a lot of time. What we want to see, the optimal outcome when you're putting together kind of a photon delivery system is you want to have the superficial tissue dosed at the optimal rate, but you also want to have the deeper tissue dosed at an optimal rate. And with the kind of deep red only systems that you see out there, that doesn't penetrate through quite as much to the deeper tissue. The infrared does. We also see that there's a lot of LEDs that are used for this, and there is a place for LEDs in this dosing schema that we actually are deep red because it doesn't penetrate a ton already. We use the deep red for the more superficial tissue and kind of bringing more blood flow, dilating the blood vessels and bringing more blood flow to the area. But for the internal tissue, a lot of what you see with the dosing schemas that are out there, LEDs emit light in a very broad angle of emission. And so when you see an LED product that's dosing to internal tissue, it's really overdoing it, and you see really much poorer outcomes at the superficial levels because they just have to kind of overblast these shallower tissues. And it's really hard to find this balance for superficial tissue and deeper tissue. And that's our goal with our, again, tens of thousands of hours that go into this mathematical modeling and then physiological testing for so how that starts and how we approach it, which is a little bit different than most of the industry, is we know what photoacceptors exist at what depth of tissue. And then we build mathematical models to say, how are these different wavelengths at these different powers, at these different frequencies, at these different duty cycles going to most optimally trigger those photoacceptors? And we model that first, and then we take that and design it into a product. And then with our physiological team, we put in metrics that we measure out of people for what are downstream pieces of, and again, the serum nitric oxide in your bloodstream is one of those. And with that, we say, here's what our model says where we should be. Here's where we're actually seeing in reality. How do we close this gap? And so we've put tens of thousands of hours into closing that gap and really kind of dialing in the dosing in the most powerful and meaningful way possible. And I think it's mainly because we've kind of addressed it backwards. Like, what are the trigger points that we're trying to trigger and the signals downstream that we're going to see from those from a health and outcomes improvement standpoint? And then how do we work the modeling and the product design to be able to meet those?
Right. Wow. Well, it sounds like you've had great success in doing just that. That's so cool. Like, I feel like we need to take a quick step back here, because I like to jump right in because I know a little bit about this, but let's say this podcast is for clinicians. Let's face it. If you're a clinician and you're treating people with pain, maybe you haven't heard of this therapy before, you've used some of the terminology already. I'd love for you to kind of explain the terminology around this, maybe like I was a 5-year-old, just so it's easy to understand for people who aren't so familiar. Could you do that for me?
Absolutely. I think one way we could do that is start talking about what the impacts are that we're trying to trigger, and that we see both in our research, but also in the over 7,000 different medical trials that have actually tested photobiomodulation, or again, with the medical community and a research standpoint, there's a number of different ways you can term this, but the most broadly used is photobiomodulation. We see low-level laser therapy, we see cold lasers, we see a number of different things in the space. But with all of that research, the most, I think, thoroughly proven and tested outcomes that we see from this are modulating oxidative stress. So, and I say modulating versus just decreasing, because what we'll also see is if you can see negative outcomes from having too low in oxidative stress, and this actually modulates it back into a healthy range. So keeping your oxidative stress within a healthy range, increased levels of ATP, or energy production, by your mitochondria, removing bottlenecks for energy production in your mitochondria. And that triggers a number of things from that mitochondrial retrograde signaling, but that's probably not in our 5-year-old description. Increased blood flow and decreased inflammation. And so all of those have been tested a number of different ways and are very thoroughly vetted from a medical aspect. But the photoacceptors are what start the entire chain. So when you look at, and we'll just give one simple example of hemoglobin. When you trigger hemoglobin, it dissociates nitric oxide from hemoglobin. So that triggers a chain of signaling downstream that has a number of healthy kind of impacts on the body. There's, depending on how you count it, 5 to 7 different main photoacceptors that we target with our devices that really trigger these big wins of modulating oxidative stress, increasing blood flow, and I think I may have missed the decrease of inflammation there. So yeah, there's a number of different impacts for these, but they all come from these upstream photoacceptors that we trigger, almost like you would trigger different signaling pathways with pharmaceuticals in the body, but just without the negative.
Vitamin Lab revolutionizes personalized supplements. empowering health practitioners to create tailored supplement formulations that address each patient's unique needs. Bring personalized health to your practice and choose from over 200 professional-grade ingredients to create vitamin formulas that improve patient adherence and result in tangible outcomes. All ingredients are sourced from the world's most trusted suppliers, and Vitamin Lab provides hands-on support to help you formulate and launch personalization to your patients. Say hello to a new era of personalized supplement solutions. Go to getvitaminlab.com/personalized to save $100 off your first formula.
Love it. Love it. That's much better than I could do. I'm always like, the mitochondria, right? They like light, go, more energy. Good. Get it to the tissues. It's awesome.
That's not wrong though. That's 100% correct as well.
When can we use this type of therapy? We've already talked about like a few kind of use cases, but like, what are kind of the top 5 uses for cold laser therapy for optimal well-being?
So it's an excellent question, and I would love to do one thing before we dive in, because
Sure.
the number of things that it actually impacts downstream are massive, and there's a lot of really powerful outcomes that you can drive by using this type of technology. I would say one thing that we get a very reasonable question about is, how is it possible that you are treating endometriosis and you're also able to increase blood flow in the brain? And I think before we're going to go into the specific kind of pathologies we treat and then just general health and wellness outcomes that you can expect from the devices, the one point that we try to kind of bring on the table first is, when you look at what we're triggering from a reduced inflammation, from a modulated oxidative stress, and from an increased blood flow, these key points really are mediating factors for so many different downstream problems in your body. And so when your mitochondria is not working kind of in its tip-top shape, you may be in prediabetes or diabetes or metabolic dysfunction. The downstream outcomes from that range from neurological to inflamed joints to cancer to, there's really a number of different things that are impacted by being able to improve these kind of key pieces in the signaling pathways. And so with that kind of caveat in place, some of the best use cases that we see with our users are osteoarthritis. If it's chronic inflammation, we're going to have a very strong impact on it. So osteoarthritis is a pathology of chronic inflammation. We see that inflammation decrease. And we often get a question about, are you able to trigger regrowth of cartilage? When you're looking at soft tissue like that, one of the things that we are able to trigger with this is getting people back into homeostasis first by removing the inflammation. You increase the rate of production of new soft tissue cells, and those are not the fastest growing cells, a little bit faster than bone, but way slower than other cells in the body. So this is essentially a month scale process to be able to get through this. But you can see people, and there's very good studies on this. We haven't done those ourselves, but with laser therapy, increasing cartilage thickness in the joints of osteoarthritic patients. So osteoarthritis is a big one. There's a number of different impacts for female reproductive tissue that we've been diving into recently. And one of these is endometriosis. Again, when it's a inflammation-mediated pathology, there's really a powerful impact. And we see a number of and we're actually bringing out a female fertility and pathology-specific device later this year that really targets endometriosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, even down to things like menstrual pain and inflammation from kind of a monthly cycle standpoint. So again, there's a number of different things across the board. There's a very reasonable question to ask about this, which is how is you guys are treating all of this, and this is not snake oil. But I think when you think about the actual mediating factors that we're treating, that we're intervening on, not the actual outcomes of those, it makes a lot more sense.
It really does. Yeah, it really does. I've done the same thing with people where I've, had to explain, like, this is an inflammatory condition where that's causing symptoms. And we know we can get substance P reduction with this therapy too. Like, you can get some pain reduction without you getting through a whole program. Like you can feel good the next day, even though it hasn't treated the tissue yet because of the immediate reductions in pain that occur, which is another reason why this is an awesome idea to have an at-home device, just to help people move better, right? And be able to train more and that type of thing. And I see that you've got some athletes, and your ambassador program looks absolutely incredible. And the list of people who are using your device and promoting it is absolutely incredible, which is a testament likely to the effectiveness of the device. Can you speak to that program at all and what kind of the feedback you've had from athletes?
Absolutely. We really get along with athletes. I was an athlete when I was younger. I'm well into my middle age, and but still like to play rugby and train CrossFit, which are not necessarily the the lowest injury sports you could play when you're in your mid 40s. But I also need this to be able to kind of recover from it. But I would say our team spend a lot of time in the medical literature from a physiology standpoint, and really try to support both the athletes and their team of physiologists and coaches and trainers and et cetera with the most recent literature. And we get excited about this. This is what, we started the company to be able to help people change their lives. And well, you can see, Olympic weightlifting athletes get themselves back on track from a training standpoint. And you can see CrossFit athletes and Major League Baseball players and PGAs. It's kind of I get a little starstruck with it still. It's crazy because it's people that you really kind of look up to from their abilities and their kind of world-class training regimens, and to be able to help these kind of athletes recover faster and then also go through strength gain curves, which is a really cool one for this. So if you're training really heavy and intense weightlifting resistance training, or even with sprints and things like this, we work with a number of different Olympic teams, and the special forces and these type of guys as well. The stress they put their body under is incredibly high, and they really need to be able to do whatever they can to reduce that and get back into training faster. And when you can get them back into training faster, their projected strength curves, we've seen an improvement for how fast they go through this. And so that's additive, and it kind of lines up with my own personal approach for things. Is if you can get 2% better every day, let's make the investment to do that now. And we see that impact from a training standpoint, a recovery standpoint, muscle growth, strength, power generation. There's typical curves, and then there's, once you start treating the tissue that's been trained with photobiomodulation, you just recover that much faster and can get back into your training program that much heavier.
Absolutely. How can we, where do we stand now? I know the research is excellent here. Everyone I know who has these devices from a clinical standpoint is either a chiropractor or a naturopathic doctor, in Canada anyways. Why, given the volume of research and how effective these tools are, why isn't it more accepted in kind of conventional care, your physician group and your physiotherapy group? Maybe it is in other jurisdictions, just not mine. What's your perception on that?
I think part of it's also the fact that devices just aren't as broadly adopted and commercially viable as pharmaceuticals. So, pharmaceutical companies just do a lot better job of making money out of what they're doing. It's a recurring revenue model versus you buy one device and you're kind of set. That's a very big difference from having to kind of monthly and ongoing invest in like these different pharmaceutical applications. And I think it's also just early. There's there is a potential path forward for us and other photobiomodulation devices to be able to go through insurance coding and all of this. The problem is that there's a very set and mature path for pharmaceuticals through that same kind of FDA and regulatory landscape. With devices, there's really not. And the ability to kind of build moats and walls around your branded pharmaceuticals generates billions of dollars, where, it's guys like us, startups, coming in and kind of attacking something that can really provide a lot longer and better outcomes long-term for patients. And the FDA and other regulatory processes around this just take time to catch up. And I think, again, there's a path forward through that. The downside is that it requires, it's uncertain in length and very expensive. And so as the market grows and more people adopt the devices, we do anticipate that we will see insurance coding and additional paths build themselves through, because the outcomes systemically are just fantastic. It's really much better than you would see from a pharmaceutical, much lower risk, much more thorough testing already from the medical community. And so, systemically, I'm an optimist, and I think we'll find that the system will adapt to be able to allow us to grow through and commercialize the product in a way that's meaningful for people. And our goal is to continue to erode the prices over time, so more and more people, democratizing it enough so that more and more people can get their hands on a really good laser therapy device and use it at home and see these outcomes. And so, again, we're 50,000 devices in so far, but it's that's I think that's the tip of the iceberg, and hopefully will generate millions of these going forward, because what we're here for is not selling the devices; it's impacting people's lives, and really, how do we measure that? And so that's our next steps with it as well, is how do we personalize and measure these outcomes in individual physiology versus the more sweet spot dosing testing that we've done to date.
Right, for sure. No, it's a great answer, and it really resonates with me. First of all, I was thinking, why the heck would you even care right now if it's accepted conventionally, because you're doing so well for the at-home model, and what does it make a difference? But I was thinking about an example where a person did get a device covered for osteoporosis to a certain extent here in Canada, and that was very helpful. I don't think they covered the whole thing, but some coverage was definitely helpful. So if that does hit, that would be absolutely incredible to have, make it so that you could get this even in more hands.
It's so exciting. I think there's going to be a number of different things that kind of, a number of different straws that we put on that camel's back to try to break it, so that we can get more early and preventative tools like this into patients' hands. One of those is we have a pathway into the VA, which is the second largest hospital chain in the US. And they'd really like to see veterans be able to recover from surgery, from PTSD, from a number of different things that are kind of endemic in that system, and give them tools to be able to both treat and intervene and see better outcomes, reduce pain, reduce inflammation, and really kind of give people a tool to kind of lever themselves out of some pretty poor situations relative to their physiological impairments. And being able to do that will also bring us a lot closer into the regulatory path for being able to cover this from an insurance coding standpoint as well. So it's exciting. Seeing this on people who've had kind of limb replacements and again, the PTSD piece for the neurological tissue in the brain. There's just so many different applications. When you can effectively reduce inflammation and oxidative stress, it really has a powerful impact in the body. And it's just great to see that in more and more use cases.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, I love that pathway. That's a great pathway. We just got some coverage for the Veterans Affairs here in Canada for naturopathic medicine, and that was really exciting to me. I never traveled. I never went overseas, but I was a naval officer before I became a naturopath, and it's really important to me that we get some good care for those folks, and that's an excellent place for you to be. Of course, that's awesome.
It's super exciting, and again, just the kind of what our team thrives on is these use case kind of stories and testimonials that we get in. That's kind of our the ring the bell kind of event for our team is. With the number of these devices that we're shipping now, we're really getting in 3 or 4 or 5 different life-changing stories from people on a daily basis, and that stays in front of our team. And some of the most powerful ones have been from people who have been in the armed forces and have retired and really didn't have an option for other treatment paths, and had, even getting people back off of opioids and back into kind of really a much more productive sense for themselves. It's just amazing to see these stories come in. And so that's what drives us. That's our motivation as a team.
Really good spot to be. I hope that takes off even further for you. That's really, really cool. But what are the misconceptions of photobiomodulation then, if everything is so great? Where do people get a little spicy about this? Any issues out there that you're working on?
So there's a few things. Again, we're one of our key focus areas is to be able to increase the quality of the outcomes that we can provide and the measurability of that, but also just make it much easier to adopt. And so how do we reduce the friction points and provide better outcomes? And one of the things that we deal with now is, and this isn't to knock anyone else's product, whenever you have a new technology come to market, you're going to have early version products, and you're going to have products that kind of carry that on and take it into a more, developed form. But we see with a lot of the panels that are out there, essentially we look at that as a Gen 1 product for photobiomodulation, because it's essentially just strapping a bunch of LEDs to a board and then hoping that the dosing is correct. And they do some level of optical power density kind of mapping for these, but that's not really the best way to kind of get the results that you'd like to target for your patients. And so one of the things that we kind of see and hear quite a bit is, I used red light therapy and it didn't work for me for this and this and this. And, that's unfortunate, because really with red light therapy / photobiomodulation, the main driver for the outcome, yes or no, kind of 1-0, are you going to get the outcome? And then also the kind of scale of the outcome that you get. So if you're going to reduce pain, yes, are you reducing pain? And then how much are you reducing pain is based on the dosing. And so when we take the time to go build the models for this photon distribution models through tissue, to do this the right way, it's a little frustrating to hear like, oh, this didn't work for me for this. And the simple answer for that is the dosing wasn't correct. Those are early products. Give a really kind of clinical level device a try, because you really will see the outcomes. We have really kind of once we parse through all of our data, we try to measure as much as we can with our users on their outcomes, because it's part of our mission. We see over 97% have a positive impact for this, and over 80% have an overwhelmingly positive impact for this. And this is across all different pathologies and pain points, et cetera. We also do try to set expectations as much as we can. It will reduce pain, but when there's a mechanical cause for that pain, that's not something that we can reduce. When the pain is linked with inflammation, we deal with it very effectively. When it's not, if there's a mechanical cause for that pain, if you're, and this is a very silly example, but if your finger is broken and sticking through your skin,
right,
this is not going to solve that. If you want to recover from it after it's been is set and it's back in place, we can help you with that. But before that point, when there is a mechanical issue with it, we have a hard time to be able to fix that broken bone, as an example.
Yeah, totally. No, I think it's a great example. I think it's an excellent example. And in that case, it likely speeds recovery. That's for sure, once it's finally set. Let's talk about the protocols. Like, let's make a tendon injury. So for example, maybe tennis elbow or something. What's the type of protocol that someone might go through to recover from this? Say the pain is like an 8 out of 10. It's worse when they use the tissue, they can't actually play any longer. What type of therapy would you, or like frequency of use, would you expect using your device?
So one thing about the elbow, with both tennis and golf elbow, because we've had a dive into this, and our goal really is, again, not to sell the product, but to get the results for people. And so we do a lot of follow-up on this. With tennis elbow and golf elbow, it's an overuse, typically an overuse kind of injury or pathology. Treating the local tissue for 15 minutes really clears up about 80% of this. What we found, though, is that a lot of this can also be referred pain from the shoulder and from the, essentially inside between the scapula and the spine. And so we advise using the device for 15 minutes on the local tissue. And then if you're not seeing a result for that, and you're part of that 20% that's non-responsive, start treating the shoulder and that area between the scapula and the spine and the ganglion area. That's gotten us up above the 95% kind of resolution point on these repetitive stress injuries. And some of the ones that didn't see the scale of outcome that we'd like to do, our team does not like saying we couldn't fix things, and we really want to see people feeling better. So we've developed a myofascial trigger point release product that once we kind of put this into play on the shoulder and on the scapular area, and I can get you a diagram for that, because it is a little specific as to where to place it, the outcomes go up to almost 100%. So it's a combination of things, but the outcomes are really powerful on this, particularly for repetitive stress injuries.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, this is a big challenge with treating pain. Where you have, you're mentioning earlier about, for example, treating the neck to promote nitric oxide or whatever. Like, you get in a situation here where you could treat a different area and that might improve mobility, which ends up being the thing they needed. Or in this case, maybe the ganglion was the thing they needed to be treated or something like this. So for example, on the nitric oxide thing, it reminds me of just being able to exercise more, feeling better energy, and the positive outcomes that that come with that. And this holistic approach to wellness is so applicable in pain management too. And so, I love that approach. But like, let's say in the group of the 80% who did benefit from it, how many treatments typically would be recommended of this 15 minutes kind of on the elbow?
We recommend using it ongoing and starting 5 to 6 days a week to drive faster response from the body. With, I think, our elbow, and we have set protocols around these, but we also try to give reasonable expectations. And with the elbow in particular, it's 4 to 5 weeks, I believe, we see this turning around from the pain and from the functional kind of use standpoint. Just to kind of also be, completely transparent, which we really kind of go out of our way to do from an expectation standpoint. There are things like osteoarthritis of the hands that can take up to 8 weeks. So there's just less tissue for us to deal with there. And so we see people who are like, hey, I've been using it for a month. And it's like 2 months, hands are tough. It's just, there's nobody who can do it faster than that. We just don't have enough tissue to interact with there. And also, I think you made a really good point about pain as well that I'd love to kind of double down on. We see the same thing with headaches. There's, depending on how you count them, 7 to 9 different kind of causes for headaches. They're very multivariate. We deal with 5, depending on how you count it, 5 to 6 of those. So people ask, how, is this going to work to help my headache? Well, we can, if you have the time, we'll help you kind of parse what's causing it in the first place. But there are things that we cannot treat for a headache, but for the majority of these, we actually can. So there's, again, we try to be as upfront and reasonable in the expectations that we set, because again, we're here to help people move their quality of life. If the device isn't going to help you, we don't want to waste your time, and we don't want people losing kind of faith or credibility in a really powerful tool that should be in their intervention toolkit, particularly for getting ahead of things, like cardiovascular disease. You can really have a powerful impact on neurovascular performance in the brain. There's a number of different things that if you're using this regularly, there's great protocols for being able to see much better outcomes. It just depends on what outcomes you're trying to get towards.
No, totally. I mean, what you're saying for these examples really resonates with me too. It's kind of what I've seen in practice as well. Let's stay on the topic of pain, if you don't mind. One thing I've been taught but I don't think I've taken seriously enough is the combination of, say, for example, a 660 or a 660 with an 808 at the same time. So sort of like priming the tissues. Is this important in pain management to be combining the two types in one?
We have found it effective. It is more effective. And again, even there's some very strange places where it's more effective. So even with gut pain, where the red light doesn't penetrate through to that gut tissue, the 808 does. If we remove the red, we don't see the scale of improvement on gut pain. And it depends on the pathology, but that's almost across the board. And so the combination of these has been really powerful. We're actually, I got an early prototype version of these in. We were just out visiting our manufacturing partners for this. We have a new device coming out with 4 different wavelengths, 3 of lasers, infrared lasers, and then 1 still with the deep red 660 red. But this is these are little magnetic pieces that'll have a modular kind of screen on front. You can see how long it's going, and we're going to use these. We've actually put a lot of engineering time into being able to. Most photobiomodulation devices really only can modulate what they call the pulse width modulation characteristics, which is essentially turning the light on and off, but you can't change the power of the light. So what's called the amplitude of that power. Our new devices that we're launching and starting to deliver this summer, you can actually change the pulse, the frequency, the duty cycle, the amplitude, everything. And it gives you a huge amount of flexibility across 4 different channels of lasers or lasers and LED to be able to dose things in a very effective way. And this is where we see the kind of industry going is being able to provide much more flexible dosing. And then, right behind this, early next year, we'll also be introducing some sensor products that allow us to sense on a personal level what these are. So we have some things that we track from a biometric standpoint. Are we triggering what we want to trigger in the physiology from the patients? And essentially, how do we optimize that on an individualized basis? And so that's 2 things that we see, in the near future for our products from a step forward in providing a little bit more personalization and a little bit less of that sweet spot dosing, and making sure that everyone's getting the full optimal outcome from the treatments.
Well, good on you. I mean, like in a company like this, like you can tell it's mission driven because I know how expensive this must be for you to like say, okay, I've got a winner, but let's go for another winner, like maybe two. You could simply sell the one you have. You don't have to continue doing this. This is awesome. This is so cool. How do you stay focused on this? Like, why are you upgrading right now? If like this is so awesome. I'm so excited to see what is next with your company.
Really, because we think that there's a way to stay ahead of almost all disease and pathology, and to an extent slowing aging down as well, by really addressing metabolic dysfunction and a number of the things that we can actually measure in the body for that. So there's great biomarkers for this. And we're also just living in a really exciting time. Like what's come out from a sensor standpoint and from a laser standpoint, from a kind of component level over the past 5 to 10 years is unprecedented. Like we're still using, so I found a great use out of my Whoop, but that's based on a technology that was really kind of developed in like the 60s. Mm-hmm. And the resolution of imaging and the type of biometrics that you can pull from this are very, very limited. And they've done an amazing job. I use it. I get a great behavioral change for myself for recovery and training and all of this from a stress load that I put on my body. But what's available to us now in building our next generation versions of sensors and the therapeutics piece of this is just we live in kind of, if you're a technologist, we're kind of kids in a candy store. And we really just want to leverage that to take as much advantage of all of these awesome new technologies as we can to help people have a way to get ahead of their disease and really understand, what is their exposure, that there's a number of different things we can sense with this. So with metabolic function and with microvascular sensing, we can now look at, early diagnostics for Alzheimer's and dementia, and then how to actually treat for that in different areas of the brain. You can start looking at things like prediabetes and metabolic dysfunction as triggers for being able to treat these and try to increase insulin sensitivity. There's just so many different things that we can do now that weren't possible 5 or 10 years ago. It seems, just an exciting time to be alive and be a part of this.
Definitely. Is it ever? I'm building this AI tool right now and I'm just obsessed with it. This the ability to build something that's like really good and kind of a pretty quick is so exciting to me. Love it so much.
It's wild.
You've also put a lot of intention on the function here. Like I've watched some of your videos where you're like doing your daily stuff. You can move around with this thing on. Can you speak to that kind of part of this, like how usable this is at home?
Yeah, we one of the things we've done is we try to remove ourselves from our technologists and kind of nerd circle of product developers and get more people involved.
Nerd circle. I never heard that before. Nerd circle. I'm going to use that. That's mine now.
Please feel free. But yeah, one of the things we've tried to do is identify people who can get the best outcomes from this, but wouldn't use it normally. And so I use my parents as an example for this. They're in their 70s. When you're in your 70s, there's a number of different things like sarcopenia or muscle wasting. You have risks increasing from your cardiovascular endothelial tissue stiffening. There's a number of different things that these devices can help people with, but they would not adopt this if it's not relatively easy and then also validated by a number of different doctors and researchers in the space. And so to be able to kind of focus on targeting people who really can get great outcomes from this, but need something that's easy, need something that's portable, and also a bit of coaching on the habit stacking. Like one of the things that we really try to instill in people is the consistency and regularity of use is going to drive your outcomes. So find something that you do every day, not something aspirational. Like we have a few folks asking about, should I do it with my meditation? Hey, how many times have you meditated in the past 2 weeks? Once? No. Do it with your Netflix and Cheetos because you're doing that every day. Like if you're not going to change that behavior, if it is something that is a habit, for me, it's coffee and emails in the morning. I can't go a day without my coffee and emails in the morning. And so I do my treatments daily like that. And so we've tried to, with every hour into from our team into the design for the product, make it as low barrier to entry and as high engagement and as easy to use and low friction as possible. and as easy to build habits as possible. And so again, we had people asking, that was actually from some NFL guys, some defensive linemen for the Washington Commanders. They wanted to carry it on their plane when they travel. And so we had to go through things to make it so that they don't have to drop. As soon as people drop a habit, but you have a potential for them dropping off the longer term benefits that they'll see from this. And so we've tried to remove those drop points as much as possible.
Ah, yes. Nice approach. Goodness gracious. Well, I've learned so much from you today, Forrest. I'd love to, hear, where could our viewers kind of learn more about Kineon? Where should they go look?
If people are interested in finding more about Kineon, they can see us at kineon.io, Kineon.io. We have our head of research does a great job of breaking down how light interacts with tissue and what it can do for people from a recovery and pain and inflammation and performance standpoint. So it's a great way to get us. And then Kineon_labs for Instagram. And we have a great group. If you just search for Kineon in Facebook or in Meta, you can find us there as well. And I think we've got over 6,000 maybe people 5,000 to 6,000 people in there. That really just great community. People are answering each other's questions and really providing a lot of context for how to use the product most effectively.
Thank you so much for your time, sir. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure that we'll talk again soon.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dave. Really appreciate it. Have a great day and really, really enjoyed the discussion. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for today's discussion. What about today's podcast resonated with you? Be sure to tag at Dr. David Dizer and at Get Vitamin Lab. If you're learning from and enjoying this podcast, please let us know by subscribing to our YouTube channel and follow the show on Spotify and Apple. And don't forget to leave us a review. It's the best way to support our podcast, and it helps others find us. To learn more or book a demo to explore what personalization could do for your practice, please go to www.getvitaminlab.com/personalized.